What's up guys, my name is Marc Steiner and this is my friend Ken. You probably remember him from the 105 review, and today we are going to be reviewing and comparing the Sony Zeiss 16-35 f4 to the Sony G Master, what you're viewing us through right now. Let's get right into it. On to the physical traits of these lenses. The f4 is definitely a smaller and lighter lens, coming in at 518 grams versus the 2.8 that comes in at 680 grams. Build quality is definitely better on the 2.8, which is not surprising given its price point, but both lenses are weather sealed. The 2.8 has a custom button and an AF/MF switch on the side, which is super helpful, something that the f4 lacks. Neither lens zooms internally, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. Both lenses have a pretty big filter size, with the f4 having a 72mm thread and the 2.8 having a 82mm thread. However, the f4's filter size is much more common than that of the f2.8. Now on to the IAF test. Both of these lenses perform very similarly. The focus stuck to the eye the entire time, and it did a very good job of tracking fast movements. I will note, however, that the 2.8 seemed to pick up the eye at further distances compared to the f4. Now onto the video AF test. As Ken is backpedaling, you can see that the 2.8 is definitely able to track him better. I also notice a much more green hue shift in the f4, and we'll see if this persists in the photo test. When Ken starts to run towards the camera, the 2.8 is still able to track him better, keeping him in focus the entire time, whereas the f4 is only able to get him into focus when he's much closer to the camera. Both of these lenses have a pretty pleasing rack focus, but because of the shallower depth of field offered by the 2.8, it's much more noticeable and pleasing because there's a bigger throw happening. When Ken comes back into frame, neither lens is able to get him into focus. When he comes back into frame again, neither lens attempts to get him into focus. It's only when he pops back into frame this time and gives the lenses a second to focus that they're actually able to lock onto him. The 2.8 still seems to grab focus faster this time, although the f4 is not far behind with the initial focus lock. The 2.8, however, still tracks better as Ken moves away from the camera. Now onto the photo test. As I stated previously, there does seem to be a slight green color cast with the f4 versus the more natural but slightly magenta hue of the 2.8. Both of these lenses suffer from barrel distortion on the wide end and pincushion distortion on the long end. When lens corrections are applied, the vignette on the 2.8 disappears, whereas on the f4 it still suffers from a very heavy vignette. Wide open at 2.8, the G Master looks to be a tad sharper than the f4 and gets sharper as you stop down. The corner-to-corner sharpness on the 2.8 is incredible and one of the best I've seen on a lens. So as you can see, we've compared the G Master to the f4, and they're both fairly good lenses. The f4 performed a lot better than I was anticipating, I'm not gonna lie. I thought that the difference was going to be much bigger than it was. Yeah. And, you know, the difference is still pretty obvious. There's no way around it, yeah. But it's not as drastic as I thought. And I think for people who are debating between these two lenses, if they're willing to pay, so the f4, as we just looked up, is $1,350. The 2.8 G Master is $2,200. That's a pretty significant price difference.
I agree.
But we were talking about this before, and I feel like a lot of people who are debating between this one and this one should definitely look at the Tamron as a very viable option because it gives you the 2.8. It performs very well, and it's cheaper than both of them, which is really surprising. And you know, you own this lens. In hindsight, if you didn't own this lens right now today, would you still buy it or would you get the Tamron?
Yeah, I'm a little biased, gotta be honest, because I use this lens and I really like it. But still, the Tamron is it's attractive lens.
It is.
For the price point and what it is. I mean, if I didn't have it, I'll probably get the Tamron.
How often do you find yourself using that 35?
Ooh, yeah, I use it more as a 16mm, but sometimes it is convenient when you just kind of want to, zoom into it. It's nice. And for me, I guess because it's an f4, I don't shoot, it's more for landscape and stuff. So I'm not too worried about the low light performance and stuff. It has
because even if you bought this lens, you'd be stopping down to f4.
Yeah, anyway. For a lot of, I think so too.
Yeah. For what you do, exactly. So I feel like for a lot of people, the Tamron is a very viable option. Between these two, do you think the price difference is justified?
Nah.
No?
No. If before Tamron, okay, if you're, if if you're a pro photographer, whatever, you're racking in the money, then yeah, like you can. It makes it makes sense if you want to go for like the top performance. But if not, you're more of a hobbyist and you want the 16 to 35 over for Tamron for some reason, then yeah, I mean it's a pretty solid lens as long as you don't need 2.8.
Yeah. So do you think this lens is worth $1,350? No?
No, sadly.
What do you think it would be worth?
Like
in your opinion?
$1,000.
I think $1,000 is fair. I think
is
900, 1,000, something more in line with the Tamron would be more intriguing. I think it's not a bad lens, and like you said, it's optically stabilized.
Yeah,
which is something that the G Master does not have, and that is a nice pro for video people who are shooting handheld. It's always nice to have a stabilized lens, and even with it being stabilized, it's a much smaller form factor.
And it's lightweight.
And it's lighter.
Yeah.
So it's nicer to vlog on. It's nicer to just carry in your bag. It's not going to kill you as much. The 2.8 isn't monstrously heavy.
Yeah, but you can feel it.
There's a significant weight difference. So if weight is something you're interested in, the f4 might be a very valid option for you. All right, guys, that's it from us. Let us know what you think in the comment section down below. This has been Ken. Check him out on Instagram. He's a dope guy. My name has been Marc Steiner, and we will see you next time.